الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Inshallah, we'll continue with reading from the book known as Al-Musannaf li Abi Bakr Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Shaybah rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 235 after the Hijrah. And we're still in the section Kitab al-Tahara, the section known as the Book of Purification. And we reached the chapter where the author, he says, Fi Mash al-Ra's kayfa huwa. This chapter is regarding wiping over the head. How should it be done? How should the wiping over the head be done? The verifier of the book, Shaykh Al-Shithri, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he said in his footnotes commenting on this, where he presents the view of the four major madhahib regarding any topic, he said, قال طائفة يبدأ بمؤخر رأسه إلى جهة الوجه ثم يعود، وقال آخرون يبدأ بأعلى رأسه ثم يذهب ناحية وجهه ثم يعود لمؤخر رأسه ثم يعود إلى ناصيته، وقال الجمهور يبدأ من جهة الوجه إلى القفا ثم يعود، ومذهب الجمهور أرجح والخلاف في الأفضل. Al-Shithri, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he says that one group, or a group, of scholars, they say that the individual should begin with the back of their head and move to the direction of the face and then go back. They should start with the back of their head, for example, the back of their head, moving to the direction of their face and then return to the back again. While another group, وَقَالَ الْآخَرُونَ, another group of scholars say that he should begin with the top of his head, right? The top of his head, and then he goes to the direction of his face, and then he goes back down to the back of his head, and then he goes back to the front again. Or some of them do it like this. You'll see like this, right? But basically, he's saying one group says that he should start from the back and go to the front. Another group says start from the top, yafuq, right? Start from the top and then move towards the direction of the face. And then ثم يذهب ناحية وجهه, he goes to the direction of his face. And then he returns it back to the back of his head. And then he goes back to his forehead again, like that. While the Jumhur, the majority, they say that he should begin from the direction of his face, right? From the side of the head, or from the area of the head that starts next to the face, taking it to the back, i.e. the qafa, where the neck begins, and then returning it back to the front, right? From the front to the back, and then front again, like that. Al-Shithri, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he says, in the view of the majority, the view of the Jumhur, is the more prominent opinion, or the stronger view. It is the stronger of view. And the difference, or the argument, the debate is regarding which one is more preferable. The debate isn't regarding which one has to be done. The debate is regarding which one is more preferable. So he mentioned from the madhahib, starting from the back, going to the front and returning, starting from the top, going to the front, taking it to the back and then returning, and then the opinion of the Jumhur, starting from the front, taking it to the back and then returning. And he says that that view is more prominent or stronger. It has more support, but the disagreement, the debate, is regarding which one is preferable, not which one is necessary. So the al-khilaf al-afdal, the disagreement is regarding which one is more preferable. After that, the Abu Bakr rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, حدثنا حفص بن غياث عن ليث عن طلحة عن أبيه عن جده أنه قال رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ فمسح رأسه هكذا وأمر حفص بيديه على رأسه حتى مسح قفاء. Abu Bakr, he said that Hafs ibn Ghiyath narrated to us on the authority of Layth, on the authority of Talha, on the authority of his father, on the authority of his grandfather. He said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ make wudu, And so he wiped over his head like this. And Hafs, the narrator who Abu Bakr reported from, the narrator who Ibn Abi Shayba reported from, Hafs, he passed his two hands on his head until he got to the beginning of his neck. Al-Qafa is where the hair ends and the neck begins. Not the neck itself, not the bottom of the hair where you see people wiping their neck. The qafa is that back part of the head under the hook. If you know, the back of the head has a hook or a hump in it, and then it flattens down where the hair goes down under the hump until it ends at the neck. That area is called, excuse me, that area is called the qafa. And so Hafs, he passed his hands, his two hands, on top of his head until he wiped his qafa. So he wiped from the front until he got to the qafa, and he wiped like that. It says, excuse me, he says حدثنا سهل بن يوسف قال قلت لحميد أكان أنس بن مالك إذا مسح رأسه يقلب شعره قال لا. Abu Bakr, he says, Sahal ibn Yusuf narrated to us, he said, I said to Humayd, yani Humayd al-Tawil, did Anas ibn Malik, when he would wipe over his head, did he used to flip his hair? And Humayd said no. What does he mean by flip his hair? Meaning, when he would wipe to the back, would he also wipe it back to the front? As we looked in the last narration, the narration of Hafs ibn Ghiyath on Layth and Talha, on his father, on his grandfather, he just went from the front to the back one time. And so the next narration on Humayd, he said, he was asked, did Anas used to flip his hair? When he would go to the back, would he yuqallibuhu, would he turn his hair over? To which Hafs said, no, he would not do so. He would not do so. Now, he says, حدثنا وكيع عن سفيان عن عبد الله بن محمد بن عقيل قال حدثتني ربيع قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأتينا فيكثر قالت فوضعنا له الميضأة فأتانا فتوضأ ومسح رأسه بدأ بمؤخره ثم رد يديه على ناصيته. So this narration is that narration of Rubayy' that we mentioned earlier. She said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the narration is حدثنا وكيع. I'm sorry, I skipped the narration. I apologize. The narration that we should have read was حدثنا يزيد بن هارون عن حماد بن سلمة عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أنه كان يمسح رأسه هكذا من مقدمه إلى مؤخره ثم رد يديه إلى مقدمه أو مقدمه. Now, مقدمه. So the narration of Abu Bakr, he says, Yazid ibn Harun narrated to us on the authority of Hamad ibn Salama, on the authority of Hisham ibn Urwa, on the authority of his father, yani Urwa ibn Zubair, from the Fuqaha as-Sab'a, from the 7 major scholars of Medina. Urwa ibn Zubair, his son Hisham, said about him that when he would wipe over his head, he would wipe like this. And he showed, demonstrating he would start from the front and go to the rear. And then he would return to the front. He would start from the front and go to the rear and then return to the front. So this is a second method of how the Salaf would wipe over their hair or wipe over their head. The narration that we jumped to earlier, he says, حدثنا وكيع عن سفيان عن عبد الله بن محمد بن عقيل قال حدثتني ربيع قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يأتينا فيكثر قالت فوضعنا له الميضأة فأتانا فتوضأ ومسح رأسه بدأ بمؤخره ثم رد يديه على ناصيته. Waki' narrated to us, Abu Bakr says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Sufyan, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn Aqil, who said that Ar-Rubayy' narrated to us. She said, Ar-Rubayy' narrated to me. She said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to visit us, and he would do that often. He used to visit us, and he would do that often. She said, so we put out for him the mi'da'ah. The mi'da'ah is the vessel out of which one makes wudu. Al-mi'da'ah is the vessel in which one makes wudu, or from which one makes wudu. The vessel that somebody makes wudu from, they call it the mi'da'ah. She said, so we placed for him the mi'da'ah, and he came to us, or he visited us, and made wudu, and he wiped his head. He began with the back, and he returned his hands to the front, where his forehead is, or the forelock, the nasiyah. So in this narration, it says the Prophet started from the back and returned his hands to the front, where his forelock is, nasiyatihi. And so here, this is a third method. We have starting from the front, going to the back, starting from the front, going to the back and returning, starting from the back and going to the front. He says, حدثنا ابن علي عن أيوب النافع أن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما كان يمسح رأسه هكذا فوضع أيوب كفه وسط رأسه ثم أمرها إلى مقدم رأسه. He says that Ibn Ulayya narrated to us on the authority of Ayyub, on the authority of Nafi', that Ibn Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, he used to wipe his head like this. And Ayyub placed the palm of his hand on the middle of his head. He placed the palm of his hand on the middle of his head and brought it to the front of his head. He placed the palm of his hand and brought it to the front. This narration gives us the support of what we talked about previously, where it's not necessary, Allah knows best, to wipe the entirety of the head. Here, Ibn Umar, he would just put his hand on the top of his head and move it to the front, right? And you see people do this, and sometimes somebody might criticize them. Maybe somebody doesn't want to flip their hair. They don't want to go back and scrub their hair. Maybe they had their hair styled or done, and they have to go back to work. They have to do something where they have to present themselves, and if they, frazzle their hair, it might, cause them some hardship in themselves. And so here we say, no problem. You can just wipe the front of it, inshallah, and wipe it and keep it flat, keep it all going the same direction. And inshallah, this doesn't cause any harm, because we see here we have a salaf, and that is Ibn Umar, who used to wipe his hair in such a fashion. He would start by placing the palm on the top of his head, the middle of his head, the yafuq, they can call it, that soft spot, that hump, and he would just roll it to the front. Now, he says, حدثنا حماد بن مسعدة أن يزيد قال كان سلمة يمسح مقدم رأسه. Abu Bakr says that Hamad ibn Mas'ada, he narrated it to us on the authority of Yazid, that Yazid said, Salama used to wipe the front of his head. He used to wipe the front of his head. Now, so that's the chapter on how to wipe the head. The author, Ibn Abi Shaybah, he mentioned 4 methods: wiping from the back to the front, wiping from the front to the back to the front, wiping from wiping from the back to the front, wiping from the front to the back, wiping from the front to the back to the front, and wiping from the top to the middle, right? Or to the front. So these are 4 methods that he mentioned on the Salaf of how they would wipe their hair. Some of them would encompass the whole head, some of them would not. And we mentioned the statement of Ash-Shithri regarding the different madhahib that he mentioned: back, front, back, back, front, top, front, back, front, like this. And so, inshallah, all of that gives a person some more information about different ways that the Salaf would wipe over their head. We'll take the next chapter, inshallah. He says, Man qala al-udhunani min al-ra's. This chapter is regarding whoever says that the ears are from the head. The ears are part of the head. Those who say the ears are part of the head, i.e., those that say it are right, those that say it are wrong. Like we said, sometimes you see that scholars, especially the people of hadith, when they title a chapter, they chapter it either as a question or an unfinished statement, and this shows that there might be ikhtilaf in that issue. Man qala al-udhunani min al-ra's, those who say that the ears are part of the head, or the ears are from the head, i.e. the ears are part of the head. الشتري حفظه الله تعالى, he says, الأذنان من الرأس عند أبي حنيفة بمعنى أنه يكفي مسحهما مع ما يكمل ربع الرأس، وهما من الرأس عند أحمد بمعنى أنه يجب مسحهما عند مس الرأس، وقال مالك هما من الرأس ويستحب مسحهما معه ولا يجب، وقال الشافعي ليس من الرأس ويستحب مسحهما بماء جديد ولا يكفي مسحهما عن مسح الرأس. So here he mentions the opinion of the four madhahib. He says that the ears are part of the head with Abi Hanifa. And what he means by that, Abu Hanifa, is that it is sufficient to wipe them along with whatever completes a fourth of the head. Meaning in the Hanafi madhab, you have to wipe at least a fourth of your head. And so the ears are part of the head. So if you wipe the ears and whatever completes a fourth of the head, then this is sufficient. You don't have to wipe the entirety of your head. But if you wipe the ears and whatever else completes at least a fourth of the head, then your wiping over the head was sufficient. He goes on to say, and they are part of the head, i.e. the ears are part of the head with Imam Ahmed. And what he means by that is that it is necessary to wipe them when you wipe the head. So in the Hanbali method, you should wipe the entirety of the head. They say you should wipe the entirety of the head, and part of wiping the entirety of the head is wiping the ears. And so you have to wipe the head and the ears. This is all things that you have to do. He says, وَقَالَ مَالِكْ هُمَا مِنَ الرَّأْسِ وَيُسْتَحَبُّ مَسْحُهُمَا مَعَهُ وَلَا يَجِبْ. He says, and the ears are part of the head with Imam Malik. He says, and Imam Malik says, the ears are part of the head. So they're part of the head. But it is mustahab. It is preferable to wipe the two of them, and it is not mandatory. So even though they're part of the head, it is something that Imam Malik says you do not have to wipe the ears. You do not have to wipe the ears. And then he says, وَقَالَ الشَّافِعِي لَيْسَ يَا مِنَ الرَّأْسِ. Shafi'i says they are not part of the head. The ears are not part of the head. And it is preferable to wipe the two of them with new water. I.e., since they weren't part of the head, the water that you use to wipe over your head is used water. And so it's not suitable that you wipe over a new part with used water. And so when you wipe the ears according to Shafi'i, you should use new water because it's not part of the head, so you can't use the water that you wiped over the head with. And he says it is preferable to wipe over the ears or wipe the ears, i.e. because of the sunnah. But it is not part of the things that Allah mentioned in the ayah because according to Ash-Shafi'i, the ears aren't part of the head. And for this reason, he says, وَلَا يَكْفِي مَسْحُهُمَا أَنْ مَسْحِ الرَّأْسِ. And it is not sufficient to wipe them in place of wiping the head. Because the method of Ash-Shafi'i is you only have to wipe a portion of your head. Whatever portion of your head is sufficient for it to be accurately said that you wiped your head, then that is sufficient in wiping your head. So even if you just went like this, right? Or if you had a taghiyya on, like if I was making wudu and I just went like this right now with my shamag on, they would say that was sufficient because I wiped my head. If you see somebody doing this, you would say, then why are you wiping your head for? Why are you scratching your head? And so the fact that whatever part of your head can be said that you're wiping it, once you can say somebody wiped their head, then they've done what Allah commanded them. And since the ears aren't part of the head, it's not sufficient to just do your ears without actually wiping some portion of your head. And so this is some of the benefit and the disagreement about how the madhabs perceive the ayat in the Quran and the statement, the ears being from the head. So the Hanafi say that they are part of the head, and they can be included in that necessary part that you have to wash. That you have to wipe, even if you don't have to wipe the entirety of the head. The portion of the head that you have to wipe, you can include the ears in that. The Hanbalis say no, they are part of the head, and you have to wipe them, including the rest of the head. And so if you miss a part of the ears or the head, then your wudu is deficient and maybe not accepted. The Malikiyas say they are part of the head, because the hadith is clear. It says al-udhunani min al-ra's. But they're not necessary to be wiped. But instead the head is the portion that's necessary to be wiped, and the ears are a sunnah. The ears are preferable. While Ash-Shafi'i, he says, no, the ears aren't part of the head, and since they're not part of the head, you cannot wipe them in place of any other portion of the head. And when you wipe the ears, you should use fresh water or new water, and wiping them is the sunnah, i.e. preferable. So these are the opinions of the four madhahib. Let's look at the statement of the Salaf regarding this topic. Abu Bakr, he says, حدثنا وكيع بن الجراح عن ابن جريج عن سليمان بن موسى قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من توضأ فليمضمض وليستنشق والأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr says that Waki ibn al-Jarrah narrated to us on the authority of Ibn Jurayj, on the authority of Sulaiman ibn Musa, who said that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes wudu, then let him do madmada. Let him swish the water around and gargle it in his mouth. Wal yastanshiq. Likewise, let him suck the water in through his nose. And the two ears are part of the head. Wal udhunani min al-ra's. The ears are part of the head, right? In this narration, even though here it is mursal, because Sulaiman ibn Musa is not a sahabi, he's a tabi'i, but there's other narrations as well. But the point is that here it says that the ears are part of the head. Abu Bakr, he says, حدثنا عبدة بن سليمان عن سعيد عن قتادة عن سعيد بن المسيب والحسن قال الأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr, he says that Abdullah ibn Sulaiman narrated to us on the authority of Sa'id and Qatada. On the authority of Sa'id, on the authority of Qatada, on the authority of Sa'id ibn Musayyab and Al-Hasan, yani Hasan al-Basri. The two of them, i.e. Sa'id ibn Musayyab and Al-Hasan, said that the ears are part of the head. He says, حدثنا عبد الرحيم بن سليمان أن أشعث عن الحسن عن أبي موسى أنه قال الأذنان من الرأس. He says that Abdul Rahim narrated to us on the authority of Sulaiman, Abdul Rahim ibn Sulaiman narrated to us on the authority of Ash'ath, on the authority of Al-Hasan, on the authority of Abi Musa, yani Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He said that the ears are part of the head. Abu Bakr, he says, حدثنا إسماعيل بن عياش عن عمرو بن مهاجر عن عمر بن عبد العزيز قال الأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr says that Ismail ibn Ayyash narrated to us on the authority of Amr ibn Muhajir, on the authority of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the Khalifa. He said that the udhunan are part of the head. Al-udhunan, the two ears, are part of the head. Abu Bakr, he says, حدثنا وكيع عن حماد بن سلمة عن علي بن زيد عن يوسف بن مهران عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال الأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Hamad ibn Salama, on the authority of Ali ibn Zayd, on the authority of Yusuf ibn Mihran, on the authority of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, who said that the two ears are part of the head. The ears are part of the head. He says, قال حدثنا عبد الرحيم بن سليمان عن سعيد عن أبي معشر عن إبراهيم وعن قتادة عن سعيد بن المسيب والحسن قالوا الأذنان من الرأس. He says that Abdul Rahim ibn Sulaiman narrated to us on the authority of Sa'id, on the authority of Abi Ma'shar, on the authority of Ibrahim, yani Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, as well as on the authority of Qatada, on the authority of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab and Al-Hasan. They all said, i.e. Al-Hasan, Sa'id, and Ibrahim, they all said that the ears are part of the head. Al-Udhunan من الرأس. He says حدثنا وكيع عن إسرائيل عن جابر عن أبي جعفر أنه قال الأذنان عن جابر عن أبي جعفر أنه قال الأذنان من الرأس. He says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Israel, on the authority of Jabir, on the authority of Abi Ja'far. He said that the ears are part of the head. Abu Ja'far here, I believe, is Abu Ja'far al-Baqir. He says that the two ears are part of the head. The two ears are part of the head. He says, قال حدثنا أبو أسامة أن أسامة أن هلال بن أسامة عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أنه قال الأذنان من الرأس. He says that Abu Usama narrated to us on the authority of Usama, on the authority of Hilal ibn Usama, on the authority of Ibn Umar, who said the ears are part of the head. He says, حدثنا عبد الرحيم بن سليمان عن محمد بن إسحاق عن نافع أنه قال كان ابن عمر يمسح أذنيه ويقول هما من الرأس. Abdul Rahim ibn Sulaiman narrated to us on the authority of Muhammad ibn Ishaq, on the authority of Nafi', who said that Ibn Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, he used to wipe his ears. And he would say the two of them are part of the head. He says, حدثنا وكيع عن إسماعيل ابن أبي خالد عن الشعبي أنه قال ما أقبل من الأذنين فمن الوجه وما أدبر فمن الرأس. طيب. So far we mentioned all of these narrations. The narration on the Prophet, the narration on Sa'id ibn Musayyib and Hasan al-Basri, later on with Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abu Ja'far al-Baqir, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, all of these individuals, they consider the ears to be part of the head. So whatever your ruling is for the ears, for the head, would apply to the ears. The ears are part of the head. But that last narration was different. It goes into a second opinion. Somebody had a different view. He says that Waki' narrated to us on the authority of Ismail ibn Abi Khalid, on the authority of Ash-Sha'bi, who said that what is from the front of the ears, then that is part of the face. Ma aqbala min al-udhunayn, right? Like this fatty portion that is connected to the face, you could be considering that to be what he's talking about, as well as inside of the ears, right? Ma aqbala min al-udhunayn fa min al-wajh. What is from what faces or what presents itself from the ears, then this is part of the face. And so what he's saying is when you're washing the face, you should do that portion of the ear as well. He says, وَمَا أَدْبَرْ فَمِنَ الرَّأْسِ. And what goes away from the ears, then that is part of the head. And you can consider that to be behind the ears. And there's an argument to be made. You can consider that inside the ear as well. Meaning the part of the ear, let me get the angle right, which way? The part of the ear that faces you, right? And you could just say it's that fatty portion that's connected to your face. Then that's part of the face. But what goes backwards from the ear, right, the rest of it, the inside and behind it, then that is from the head. That could be the way his statement is to be understood. And it's a stretch, but somebody could say the inside of the ears is what aqbal, i.e. what presents itself and what goes away. But that seems less likely because he would have said the zahir and the batin, the outside and the inside of the ear. But when he said what presents itself, ma aqbal, it gives the meaning of what faces somebody from the ear. And the part that faces is that fatty part with the cartilage that is connected to the face, where we say the end of the face is. That's technically part of the ear. And so he's saying that part of the ear is from the face. And the part that goes backwards, the part that turns away from the people looking at you, the part that goes backwards, then that is from the head. And so if that's the case, then his statement is the same statement as everybody else's up until this point. Abu Bakr, he says, قال حدثنا ابن علي عن ابن عون عن ابن سيرين أنه قال عن ابن سيرين قال كان يغسل أذنيه مع وجهه ويمسحهما مع رأسه. Now, this narration kind of supports the other opinion of Ash-Sha'bi. When Sha'bi says what faces is from the face and what goes back is from the ear, talking about what goes back being inside and behind. This narration of Ibn Sirin kind of supports that view of what his statement could mean. So Abu Bakr, he says that Ibn Ulayya narrated to us on the authority of Ibn Aoun, on the authority of Ibn Sirin, Muhammad ibn Sirin. He used to, right, Ibn Aoun said that Ibn Sirin used to wash his ears. He would wash his ears with his face. So when he would do his face, he would also have water and get water into his ears and wash his ears. And he would wipe his ears with his head. When he would wipe over his head, he would wipe over the ears at that point as well. And so Ibn Sirin, he used to wash his ears with his face, and he would wipe his ears with his head. So he would actually clean them twice, once with a washing and once with a wiping. So that could be a third opinion or a second opinion about how the ears were washed, and those who say that the ears are part of the head. Abu Bakr, he says, حدثنا أبو داود عن عبد الملك ابن ميسرة عن ابن سيرين قال الأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr, he said that Abu Dawud narrated to us on the authority of Abdul Malik ibn Maysara, on the authority of Ibn Sirin. He said that the ears are part of the head. قال حدثنا عبد الحميد ابن عبد الرحمن الحماني عن إسماعيل بن عبد الملك عن سعيد بن جبير أنه قال الأذنان من الرأس. Abu Bakr says that Abdul Hamid ibn Abdul Rahman al-Hammani narrated to us on the authority of Ismail ibn Abdul Malik, on the authority of Sa'id ibn Jubair, that he said the ears are part of the head. قال حدثنا يزيد بن هارون عن الجريري عن عروة ابن قبيصة عن رجل من الأنصار عن أبيه عن عثمان أنه قال وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ الْأُذُنَيْنِ مِنَ الرَّأْسِ. Abu Bakr, he said that Yazid ibn Harun narrated to us on the authority of Al-Jariri, on the authority of Urwa ibn Qabisa, on the authority of a man, and here we have another example of what we learned previously. A man here, what kind of terminology did we use for that? Mubham, unidentified. He says that a man from the Ansar, on the authority of some man from the Ansar, on the authority of his father, on the authority of Uthman, that he said, Uthman said, and know, have knowledge, that the ears are part of the head. And then lastly, he says, حدثنا ابن فضيل عن حسين عن إبراهيم قال أو أنه قال سألت عن مسح الأذنين. قال حدثنا ابن فضيل عن حسين عن إبراهيم قال سألته عن مسح الأذنين مع الرأس أو مع الوجه فقال مع كل. Abu Bakr, he says that Ibn Fudayl narrated to us on the authority of Hussein about Ibrahim, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. Hussein said, I asked him, I asked Ibrahim about wiping the ears. Should it be done with the head or with the face? And he responded, with both. And so here we see the statement of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i is similar to one of the statements of Muhammad ibn Sirin, that you should, include the ears with the face as well as with the head. Here, he's saying that you should include the ears with the face as well as with the head. And so this chapter, once again, was the chapter about those who say the ears are part of the head. And we've seen that everyone that he's mentioned in this section has included the ears with the head. Some of them included it with the face as well, but everyone included the ears with the head. And that's why you see people differing about, do the ears have to be washed or not? Like Shafi'i says the ears don't have to be washed, but it is a sunnah, it is mustahab, but they are not part of the head. While Malik says that they are part of the head, but it's a sunnah and they don't have to be washed. Imam Ahmed says they are part of the head and therefore they must be wiped, should we say, wiped. Likewise, Abu Hanifa says they are part of the head and can be included in the fourth of the head that needs to be wiped. And like this, we see the end of this chapter regarding those who say that the ears are part of the head. And inshallah, we'll suffice ourselves with that amount. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.